Welcome to The Critique. The material we received today is about that recent discussion around Kelly Osbourne, specifically her appearance, the public reaction, and her very aggressive response to it all.
Right.
Okay, let's jump right in. The piece does a really solid job critiquing that celebrity fan. You know, the idea that you can have all the benefits of being in the public eye without any of the drawbacks of scrutiny.
The price of fame argument.
Exact. It makes a strong. But, and this is our first point, it misses a big opportunity to analyze the strategic power of what she was actually doing by setting that boundary so hard.
I agree. It feels a little dated in its analysis.
It does. The argument in the piece is that her "go F yourself" clapback, it basically ruins it. That's the quote. Because it shows the commenter, got under your skin.
Which is a very traditional PR view, isn't it?
Completely. It holds up things like the Jimmy Kimmel mean tweet segment as the ideal. Show some humility, don't react, be passive.
But that framework is so narrow. It's all about pre-digital traditional optic. What we really need to explore here is whether that kind of severe, unfiltered response is actually intentional, or at least a highly effective way to control the narrative right now in 2024.
So you're saying the loss of temper is actually a calculated gain?
It can be, yeah. Outrage is currency today. It's maybe the most reliable form of engagement there is. So if you just write off her response as an emotional failure, you miss the tactical genius.
Okay, so what's the pivot?
Well, look at how the conversation shifted, almost instantly. We should be analyzing that. The discourse went from these very vulnerable questions.
Is Kelly sick? Is she on Ozempic?
Exactly. It went from those questions to a much more powerful, almost noble position for her. The question became, is it okay to bully a woman who is grieving?
That's narrative judo.
Totally. She reframes the entire thing. She's no longer the subject being scrutinized. She's the victim of public cruelty. It weaponizes the very vulnerability she was trying to hide.
And the listener needs to see that choice laid out. It's not just an emotional outburst.
Right. It's a choice to fight fire with a flamethrower. And we need to differentiate that from the mean tweets approach. That segment is designed to show celebs can take a joke. The Osbourne approach is designed to show an absolute high-stakes defense of a boundary. The question isn't which one is nicer.
It's which one gets more visibility, which one serves the business model better.
Precisely. And the material even points out that negative press often drives more engagement. So there's a contradiction there.
It's a huge contradiction.
Does the forceful, non-humble clapback actually serve the celebrity brand more effectively than just sitting there and taking it? The suggestion here is to explore the idea that this Osbourne style of confrontation, it might be perfectly aligned with her brand's economic engine.
So a concrete example would be to, look at the media coverage?
Yes. Analyze the coverage before the clapback versus after. Did saying "go F yourself" get the story into outlets that would have never touched a simple "no, I'm not on Ozempic" denial? If it did, then by modern media metrics, that response was a success.
It was a win.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes sense. And that idea of setting boundaries, it leads right into our second point, which is about grief. Specifically, where do you draw the line when someone's private grief becomes a public issue?
It's such a messy topic.
It is, and the material raises this crucial ethical tension, the public's right to comment versus a celebrity's right to grieve. But it kind of dismisses the complexity. It wraps it up too quickly.
How so?
Well, Kelly Osbourne specifically brings up her father's death, saying it was only a handful of months ago as her main defense. And the material acknowledges that profound grief, but then it just concludes with this blanket statement.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, it says, if you want to grieve, you can grieve in private. And that's it. End of story.
Which is just way too neat for this kind of dilemma. That assertion completely overlooks the need for a real framework. The listener needs tools to think about where the line of scrutiny should ethically pause, especially in this specific context.
The context being that her grief was visibly manifesting as this egregiously, clinically underweight appearance she mentioned not eating.
Right. We're not just talking about a sad Instagram post. We're talking about a visible, physical transformation that is alarming people. You can't just hand-wave that away with a philosophical rule.
So we need to unpack the compromise when private turmoil becomes public spectacle?
We do. And a good place to start is with her own words. She said she's doing the best that I can and is choosing to only share the happy side of my life.
Okay.
So we need to explore that. Is choosing to share only positive, curated content while you're undergoing visible and serious distress. Does that actually invite the very scrutiny you're trying to avoid?
It's a cognitive dissonance, right?
That's the perfect term for it.
The audience sees a body that looks distressed, but the caption is all sunshine and happiness. Their reaction is an attempt to close that gap.
Exactly. When the visible reality so severely contradicts the curated narrative, the public's response isn't just bullying. It's a direct reaction to that dissonance. It's a demand for transparency.
So the suggestion is to frame it as a health representation responsibility?
Something like that, yeah. If a public figure is displaying disturbing changes while insisting everything is fine, that gap is where the public commentary is going to flood in. It's almost inevitable.
Commenters. The material does touch on this.
It does. It mentions that a lot of the comments seem to come from a place of genuine worry. Are you ill? Or you don't look right.
So there's a risk if we just focus on the price of fame argument. We might miss the part about, well, is there any obligation to address public health concerns when the change is so dramatic?
Especially, as the material notes, when her own mother, Sharon Osbourne, had extreme complications from these exact kinds of drugs. It's not happening in a vacuum.
Right. The family history is there, the visible changes are there, the huge public conversation about Ozempic is there. They're all intersecting.
So a celebrity denial in that context just carries more weight. The material needs to really explore whether aggressively denying or ignoring visibly disturbing health changes is ethically defensible when the public is so tuned into this specific conversation.
That's a much more sophisticated lens. It lifts the whole discussion from just celebrity bullying to a bigger issue of media ethics and image management.
Yeah, you have to give the listener the tools to navigate that complexity.
And speaking of how all these different pieces connect, that actually brings us to our third main point, which is about the structure and flow of the argument itself.
I agree. The core ideas are strong, but the way they're presented feels a little
Fragmented. That's a good word for it. The piece jumps between all these different celebrity analogies really quickly. They dilute the focus on the main case study, which is Kelly Osbourne.
Yeah, they feel like tangents.
Totally. We get the plus-size news anchor's clapback, the presenter's own story about weight loss, Erica Kirk's political grief thing, Kris Jenner's hands versus her face.
And Kate Winslet on GLP-1s?
Right. They're all loosely relevant to public life, but it's such a scattershot approach. None of them gets enough time to really land and reinforce the core argument.
So to fix that, to get more structural integrity, you either have to cut some of them or, better yet, integrate them much more tightly so they build a single, cohesive narrative.
So every example has to do real work.
It has to advance the core argument, not just prove a related theme exists.
Let's start with the Kate Winslet example.
Okay. So that part about what they're putting in their bodies and a disregard for one's health, that comes way too late in the original script. It feels like an afterthought.
Right.
That needs to move up, way up. It should be the central analytical lens for the whole Ozempic allegation and the disturbing appearance.
So you're saying it provides the so what? It explains why the public is so hyper-focused on her dramatic weight loss in the first place. It's not just a rumor, it's part of a massive public health conversation.
Absolutely. You establish that context early, and the whole conversation shifts. It's not about simple body shaming. It's about medically assisted, rapid body transformation and the potential risks. That elevates the entire debate and ties right back to our second point about health representation.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the news anchor analogy?
So that's used as a generic example of a failed defense, but it could be so much more useful. It should be integrated directly into the analysis of Kelly Osbourne, specifically tying back to our first point on strategic outrage.
How would that work?
You use it to differentiate rhetorical style. You ask the question, why did Kelly's raw, unfiltered Osbourne style work better or worse than the news anchor's more polished, professionally written defense?
I see. So it becomes a direct point of comparison.
Exactly. The comparison becomes the evidence for your argument about the strategic value of high-intensity outrage. You're not just saying the anchor failed. You're using her as a counterpoint to show why Kelly's approach was uniquely effective or perhaps uniquely flawed. It makes the evidence work harder.
I like that. And what about the Kris Jenner example, the hands versus the face?
If you keep it, you have to tie it immediately back to the intense pressure Kelly is under. The Jenner example is the perfect illustration of the cost of that kind of image maintenance. It shows the extreme lengths required, which then makes Kelly's outburst more understandable within that high-stakes world.
So all these architectural changes, they ensure that the analogies and the ethical questions all support that central thesis about the price of fame and celebrity defense.
Right. Instead of being interesting but distracting tidbits.
The whole piece starts to feel less like a survey of random celebrity stories.
And more like a focused, deeply layered exploration of one central case study.
Okay, so to wrap this up, to make this critique of celebrity and public accountability as strong as possible, we focused on 3 key areas. First was about deepening the analysis of strategic outrage, really seeing her clapback as a tactical move.
Second, we suggested providing a much more nuanced look at that ethical boundary between public scrutiny and grief, using frameworks like cognitive dissonance and health representation to really dig into the specifics of her situation.
And finally, tightening that structural flow, making sure the celebrity examples like Kate Winslet on GLP-1s are integrated cohesively, so that every piece of evidence reinforces the main argument instead of distracting from it.
Right. The changes are all about providing a clear analytical framework for how these boundaries get set and violated online. Use the Winslet material to set up the ethical core of the debate and use the news anchor to differentiate Kelly's specific strategy. Do that, and the impact of the work will be maximized.
Feel free to resubmit your material once you've had a chance to incorporate these suggestions.